The woman sat motionless in the corner booth, her coffee still steaming after 40 minutes. Her fingernails were caked with something dark beneath the crescents, not dirt, but something that caught the overhead Edison bulb's light with an oily sheen. The white porcelain cup before her bore no lipstick mark, despite being half empty. Behind the marble counter, the night cook noticed her reflection didn't quite sync with her movements in the nickel-plated coffee urn, lagging by perhaps half a second. Her handbag sat open beside her, and inside, visible to anyone who cared to look, was a stack of photographs all showing the same lunch counter. The same red vinyl stools, taken from identical angles across what the timestamp suggested were 17 different years. But here was the thing that made the cook's hand freeze mid-wipe. She'd been coming to this diner every Thursday since 1903, and she hadn't aged a single day. Was she hunting something in the diner's past, or was she waiting for something that would never arrive? Chapter 1: The Architecture of Hunger. Every American city had at least one by 1908, and they all smelled the same coffee, bacon grease, and fresh sawdust spread across hexagonal tile floors. The diner revolution had exploded across urban America with mechanical precision, transforming empty storefronts into gleaming temples of white marble and polished mahogany. These weren't restaurants in the traditional sense, they were theaters of efficiency, where working men could eat a full meal in under 12 minutes and return to factory floors before the foreman noticed. The lunch wagons had evolved into permanent structures, narrow as railway cars, wedged between tailors and barber shops. Thomas Whitmore had designed 300 of them across the Northeast, each one identical down to the placement of the napkin dispensers. But in February of 1909, his body was found in Wonder Diner on Ashford Street in Philadelphia, where he'd eaten the same breakfast every morning for 2 years. The coroner ruled it natural causes. The waitress who found him swore his eggs were still warm. Chapter 2: A Catalogue of the Familiar. Walk into any diner between Boston and Baltimore, and the geography was predictable. A long counter with swivel stools bolted to the floor, their red leather cracked but serviceable. Behind it, the open kitchen where cooks performed their choreographed violence on Castillon griddles, the marble countertop, always white with grey veining, cool to the touch even in summer. Overhead, the menu boards with removable letters, announcing the day specials in sans serif capitals. The air was thick with competing smells: frying onions, percolating coffee, the medicinal temps of cleaning solution. At the back, the wooden phone booth where men made calls they didn't want overheard. And in every diner, without exception, a corner booth that regulars avoided. When pressed, they couldn't say why. It just felt wrong, like sitting in a chair that was still warm from someone else. Chapter 3: The Democracy of the Counter. What made diners revolutionary wasn't the food, it was who sat beside you. Bank clerks next to iron workers, suffragettes beside policemen. The counter eliminated class barriers through forced proximity. Everyone faced the same direction, watched the same show of flashing spatulas and flying eggs. By 1912, there were approximately 3,000 diners operating in American cities. They served an estimated 2.7 million meals daily. The average meal cost 15 cents, equivalent to an hour's wage for most workers. A full diner could turn over its counter seating 4 times during the lunch rush, generating $180 in a single hour. The economics were simple: feed people fast, feed them cheap, and they'd come back tomorrow. But the speed created something else: a strange temporal compression, where strangers shared 30 minutes of parallel existence, then vanished back into the city's current. Some people claimed to see the same faces appearing across decades, aging in reverse. Chapter 4: The Woman Who Wouldn't Leave Her Name. According to the reservation book that no diner actually kept, was Elizabeth Carver. She'd first appeared on a Thursday in October 1903, ordering black coffee and apple pie. The same order every Thursday, for 6 years. By 1909, the original staff had turned over twice, but the new waitresses all knew her, knew to bring the coffee without asking, knew she'd leave exactly 1 dime as a tip, knew she'd sit for exactly 90 minutes. What they didn't know was that she never seemed to age. Photographs from the opening day showed her in the same grey dress, the same tight chignon, the same way of holding her fork. One explanation seemed obvious: there were multiple women, perhaps family members, maintaining some kind of elaborate tradition. But the night cook, who'd worked the late shift since 1904, swore it was the same face, the same precise scar above her left eyebrow, the same wedding ring with its distinctive missing sapphire. When asked directly, she'd only smile and say she was waiting for someone who was late. Chapter 5: The Speed of Silver. The diner aesthetic was designed for velocity. Everything shone: the nickel fixtures, the chrome coffee urns, the polished spoonbacks that reflected distorted faces, the streamlined design borrowed from Pullman dining cars and industrial kitchens, every movement calculated, every surface engineered for quick cleaning. Cooks developed a peculiar skill: the ability to prepare 6 different orders simultaneously, each one timed to finish within seconds of the others. The grill itself became an instrument, its temperature zones mapped in muscle memory. Eggs on the right where it was hottest, toast on the left edge, bacon in the middle where the heat could render the fat without burning. The waitresses moved in practiced routes, never colliding, their hands carrying impossible loads. But efficiency had a cost. In the speed and shine, people began to notice impossible things. A customer would order and his food would arrive before he'd spoken. Conversations that happened yesterday would repeat, word for word, with different speakers. Chapter 6. What the regulars knew. Every diner had its regulars, men whose names were scratched into the counter's surface, whose coffee cups were kept separate from the common stock. They arrived before dawn, occupying the same stools, reading yesterday's newspapers. They knew the rhythm of the place: when to talk, when to stay silent, when the cook was in a mood, and they noticed things others missed. The way certain customers appeared only on specific days. The clock above the register that sometimes ran backward for exactly 12 seconds. The reflection in the coffee urn that showed the diner as it had been or would be, with different staff, different fixtures, different people who hadn't been born yet. Most regulars kept these observations to themselves. Speaking the impossible made it more real, and they preferred the comfort of routine. But occasionally, late at night when the diner emptied, they'd mention it to each other. The temporal hiccups. The people who didn't belong. The feeling that the diner existed slightly outside normal time, a pocket where past and present overlapped like shuffled cards. Chapter 7. The Mathematics of Madness. By 1913, the phenomenon had data points. 7 diners across 4 cities reported the same anomaly, a customer who appeared across multiple decades of photographs, unchanged. In Philadelphia, the Ashford Street Diner logged 312 consecutive Thursday visits from Elizabeth Carver between October 1903 and January 1909 to 6 years, 2 months, 0 absences. The average wait time for counter service was 4.2 minutes, but some customers reported their food arriving in under 30 seconds before the order reached the kitchen. One diner in Boston recorded the same conversation between 2 strangers occurring on 4 separate occasions, transcribed by different waitresses, word for word identical. The cost of temporal displacement, if one believed the reports, 0 deaths. 17 instances of déjà vu so severe the victims quit their jobs, and one architect who stopped designing diners entirely. The alternative explanation was mass hysteria, fed by the era's obsession with spiritualism and the lingering trauma of rapid industrialization. Chapter 8. The Man She Was Waiting For. He finally arrived on a Thursday in February 1909, and the diner fell silent, though no one could say why. He was perhaps 40, wearing a suit 10 years out of fashion, and he carried a leather satchel that smelled of mothballs. He sat across from Elizabeth Carver and said, "I'm sorry I'm late." She replied, "You're 17 years late." Their conversation lasted exactly 12 minutes, conducted in whispers that somehow carried to every corner of the narrow room. The cook claimed they were speaking about a train accident. The waitress swore they discussed a wedding that never happened. The regular in the third stool insisted they were negotiating the terms of a haunting. When they finished, Elizabeth stood, left her usual dime, and walked toward the door. She paused at the threshold, turned back, and said to no one in particular, "It repeats every 7 years. Someone should write this down." Then she disappeared into the Philadelphia morning. The man remained, ordered black coffee, and when the waitress returned with it, he was gone. The satchel sat on the booth seat, and inside were blueprints for the diner dated 1896, 7 years before it was built. Chapter 9. The Architecture of Circles. Thomas Whitmore's designs contained a secret pattern when his surviving blueprints were arranged chronologically and overlaid. They formed a spiral, each diner positioned at precise intervals along an invisible curve that centered on the Ashford Street location. The mathematics were deliberate, angles calculated to the degree, distances measured to the foot. Whether this was intentional or coincidental remained debated. Skeptics noted that urban planners often created patterns unconsciously, responding to available real estate and foot traffic. Believers pointed to Whitmore's personal journals, discovered after his death, filled with calculations about temporal resonance and architectural chronology. One entry, dated March 1908, read, "If space can be bent by mass, can time be bent by habit? 300 diners, 300 repetitions." 300 small eternities. His death remained unexplained natural causes in a man of 37 with no prior health issues, found with his breakfast cooling before him. Chapter 10. The Testimony of Objects. The satchel's contents were catalogued by Philadelphia police. 17 blueprints, a pocket watch stopped at 11:47, a train ticket from 1892, 3 photographs of the Ashford Street diner under construction, and a handwritten note that read, "She won't understand until it happens to her." The blueprints showed modifications to standard diner design, subtle alterations to mirror placement, specific angles for the countercurve, precise positioning of the Edison bulbs. Modern analysts who examined the documents suggested the modifications would create unusual acoustic properties, perhaps even standing waves that could affect perception. Others noted the mirrors were positioned to create infinite reflections, a common optical trick that the era found unsettling. The watch was Swiss-made, expensive, and its mechanism showed signs of having run backward. Whether this was due to damage or design, the watchmaker who examined it refused to speculate, noting only that time doesn't work that way, so this shouldn't exist. Chapter 11. The Final Breakfast. On the morning of February 4, 1909, Thomas Whitmore entered the Ashford Street diner at 7:15 a.m., as he had every weekday for 2 years. He ordered his usual 2 eggs over easy, bacon, wheat toast, black coffee. The cook prepared it in 4 minutes. As always, Whitmore ate slowly, reading the Philadelphia Inquirer, occasionally glancing at the corner booth where Elizabeth Carver sat with her untouched pie. At 8:02 a.m. he stood, left 40 cents on the counter, and walked toward the door. He stopped beside Carver's booth, said something the cook couldn't hear, and she replied with a single word, "Thursday." He nodded, continued to the door, then turned back and sat in the booth opposite her. They spoke for 3 minutes. At 8:05 a.m., Thomas Whitmore's heart stopped. The doctor who examined him found no cause, no blockage, no damage, no explanation. His final words, according to Elizabeth Carver's later statement to police, were, "Does it hurt when you realize you've been eating the same breakfast for 200 years? Chapter 12. What Remains. The Ashford Street diner closed in 1923, demolished to make way for a bank that failed in 1931. But diners continued to proliferate, 10,000 by 1930, serving 15 million meals daily, the average cost rising to 35 cents. The design language evolved, more chrome, more speed, more efficiency, yet certain patterns persisted. Corner booths that regulars avoided, clocks that occasionally stuttered, customers who appeared in photographs taken decades apart, unchanged. Elizabeth Carver was never seen again after 1909. Though reports of a woman matching her description surface occasionally, always on a Thursday, always ordering coffee and pie, always waiting. The rational explanation is simple. People want mysteries, so they create them from coincidence and memory distortion. The alternative requires accepting that some spaces, through repetition and habit, can trap moments the way amber traps insects, preserving them, repeating them, allowing the past to leak into the present. The diner as time machine, the counter as chronological loop, the breakfast that never ends, serve to people who never quite leave. Whether this is madness or miracle depends entirely on where you choose to sit.